Marketing is a podcast for business owners and leaders, produced by my dad, Steve Davis, and his colleague at Talked About Marketing, David Duchovny, in which they explore marketing through the lens of their own 4 Ps: person, principles, problems, and perspicacity. Yes, you heard that correctly. Apart from their love of words, they really love helping people. So they hope this podcast will become a trusted companion on your journey in business.
David, can failure make you smile?
Yes, every time I think about not finishing my PhD.
You're proud of that, aren't you?
I am, because to have gone down that path for me would have meant, in a sense, that great line from the Marx Brothers, would you want to be a member of any organisation that wants to have you as a member?
On that note, are you going to finish this episode with me?
Absolutely.
Good. Well, those are my principles too, David, and if you don't like them, well, I've got others.
Our 4 Ps. Number 1, person. The aim of life is self-development, to realise one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us is here for. Oscar Wilde.
We're talking about failure in the person segment, and the inspiration for this comes from the least likely source, an actor by the name of David Duchovny. Not really a name you associate with failure, though, is it?
Put it this way, he plays very annoying characters, but he's very successful at playing very annoying characters. So one would say he does a good job of characters who fail, but that he himself is very successful.
Yeah, in fact, I often have a smile on my face when I see him on screen. I think he's on the screen very well. I never really watched The X-Files, never got into it, where he was Fox Mulder. But I did enjoy him in Californication, where he played the role of Hank Moody. But along the way, in between those super hits, he's tried some of his own filmmaking and different ventures, and many of them have just failed. And so it was really interesting having him have a chat. He did say something, and it was actually what brought this together is there was a news story a little while ago, a few weeks ago now, that the Daily Mail put out, in which they talked about how the woman who played the Yellow Wiggle had reportedly run through her fortune, and they did it in this really annoying way, David, that all media outlets love. They know something is going to trigger schadenfreude or anger in people. So what they do is they innocently put it on the table with a straight bat. I'm mixing my metaphors. And they just know that because they don't take the person to task, the hounds will. It was absolutely disgusting. The headline inflamed it. The actual story explained what really happened. And David Duchovny, in his chat with Adam Grant, says, you know what? There is an addiction to other people's failures. He said it's something of a social currency because, in a way, it takes the pressure off the person who's getting angry from then not having their own level of success. So that's one side of the coin. But, David, the thing I really wanted to talk about is the other side of the coin. And it's where he said this in the interview. Failure gives you many brothers and sisters, and failure can create empathy. Let's have a listen to how he put it and then think this through from our perspective.
There is no way to ever have a success like the X-Files. It doesn't happen. It can't happen. It's certainly not going to happen to me, but I don't think it's going to happen to anybody else either. I mean, it's just we're in a different world now in terms of consensus and culture in that way.
It seems to me that a mix of success and failure, however you define it, is more of a life well lived than a life of just accumulating and accelerating successes, because as much as success gratifies, it seems that failure is a better motivator and a better teacher.
Well, also success alienates, sets you apart. Failure gives you many brothers and sisters. And failure creates empathy. Failure should engender empathy. I think in our country now, failure engenders mockery. And that's one of the things that I wanted to kind of address with the podcast and the movie and the novel. You know, it's really our inability to accept our own failures that makes us such a schadenfreude kind of a culture. And you look at somebody like a Donald Trump who cannot accept an L. His whole presidential run is like not accepting his L. And there's nearly half the country that's going to get behind this.
So it seems like then your hypothesis is that people's desire to take others down is because they're so ashamed by their own losses.
It's a lot of what we do. We project onto the other the fears that we have about ourselves.
Interesting. And this notion that success can make you lonely, that it alienates. What advice do you have for coping with that for all the poor, struggling, successful people out there?
They're fine. They'll come back. They'll have a failure. They'll come back to earth. They'll get there.
It's interesting, David, his point that success can actually isolate you, put you up on a pedestal, separates you from the crowd, but failure is the great human leveler. Is there something positive that can be construed from this side of the coin, do you think?
Oh, most definitely, because what most of us have in common is at least a few failures that at the time have felt absolutely like it's the end of the universe, but that we've walked away from those failures with a lot more knowledge about ourselves, what we're capable of, what we want. And, you know, I find David Duchovny very interesting because he's another person who started a PhD and walked away from it.
Oh, a kindred spirit.
Yeah, and for very similar reasons to me. He realized, if I do this thing, then I go down this path and I can probably have a job at the end of it, and every day I can just turn up and do these little things. But I have to shut down more of me to succeed at this than is healthy. And as much as failing is scary after being put in the position where people have let you do a PhD, you're giving up the status of being clever. You're giving up the status of being in a good university. You're giving up the status of being seen as the future thinker in an area, the person that people will want to talk to about it. And yet the failure in the end of the day is where the freedom to realize, actually, I should do things I'm good at. I should do things I value. And I shouldn't be afraid of losing the goodwill of people I don't really care about.
Maybe in some ways it shuts some doors as well as opens some others, which is a way of resetting, I suppose. Yeah. Not that I'd wish it on anyone, of course.
No, but we should be open about talking about it. And I think in Australia, because of tall poppy syndrome, we're actually terrible at talking about success and failure. We got to this strange place where if you're too talented, we'll tear you down. But also, unlike America, where entrepreneurs will talk about their first failure, their second failure, before they got it right. How many business people here talk about the first thing that went wrong? So we're not allowed to talk about failure, and we're not allowed to talk about success. What exactly are we meant to talk about?
Although it can be fetishized in LinkedIn posts. People do love showing a glimpse of failure or a really horrible medical prognosis or something to draw people in, cue the sympathy up, and then make their point so everyone says how good they are.
Yeah, and in a sense you can see that other places talk about failure and Australians have kind of learned it through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But we haven't learned to do it in a healthy way.
No, although David Duchovny also argues that neither has Silicon Valley. He said that notion of fail fast, fail often, where failure is worn as some kind of badge, I love this, he says that's just success culture wearing failure drag. which I think is
It's a great comment.
It is, because he said, but then, and this is a multi-sided coin, because there's nuance here. He says, actually, success is a terrible thing to happen to anybody. It's not a teacher. It's something else. Whereas I suppose he's saying you do learn from failures. Success, though, I guess because you end up in a rarefied space in some situations, you don't have peers. You don't have as many peers for that sense of kindred spiritness. Maybe that's what he's getting at.
That's one big side of it. And I think the other side he's implying, and certainly my experience is, success means you've only got things to lose. Failure means you may as well get busy because you don't have anything to lose at the moment. You've already lost it. You've only got things to gain. Once you've accepted that something is a lost cause and that you're going to walk away from it, as much as that's painful and as much as time and resources are wasted, if you look at it from the perspective of if you'd continued doing it, might you have got through? Maybe. Could you have wasted more time and resources? Definitely. So what are you going to do with the time and resources that are no longer being pointed at a pointless endpoint? That's a lot of pointeds in one sentence. I should have said that one better, but what the heck?
Well, exactly. We're not going to sweat over that. We'll all do it. Actually, there was one other really quirky thing that came out of the conversation, which I think is a nice way to draw this to an end, as we reflect on this ourselves, because we are hardwired to avoid embarrassment. We prefer, obviously, to succeed and avoid the pain of failure. And so it's tempting sometimes to take shortcuts, because many people fall for the grifters who come through saying, hey, do this, buy my thing. In fact, there's someone who's selling an AI tool, especially for people in allied health, like psychologists, etc. And they say it's U-Butte and it's got all this proprietary stuff in it. And and they're charging 5 to 6 times per month what you get out of Claude or ChatGPT, and they're just sucking people in because they're worried. They want to get ahead and minimize risk. And in a way, that relates to this comment. There was a comedian, Gary Shandling, who I love. He had a lovely demeanor about him. He was a friend of David Duchovny's, and apparently he's got a quote that said, people that say nice guys finish last don't know where the finish line is, which is that point that we've become obsessed with measuring social media follows, website traffic, all these things, but there is a longer game at play here. And, these sort of values we're talking about have the staying power that I think we will see in contrast as, Trump and Musk crash and burn, or hopefully not taking the world down with them. Final thoughts, David, from a person perspective?
Yeah, I think the thing I keep thinking here is that so much of life can be vanity metrics, and yet vanity metrics don't make up for not being proud of yourself or proud of how you got up and had another go. So, a little bit of vanity metric on top of getting things right is nice, but vanity metrics on top of something shallow and pointless, not very rewarding. And sometimes failure is only failure in terms of how the outside world see it. Very often failure is freedom to escape something that you felt you had no choice to do.
Our 4 Ps. Number 2, principles. You can never be overdressed or overeducated. Oscar Wilde.
In the principles segment, I want to throw the cat among the pigeons. David, are you up for that?
Oh, absolutely, particularly if the cat's got a baseball bat.
I was hoping the pigeons would. I don't know what's worse, but that's a debate for another day. We've talked about Squibb. Simon, is it Simon Squibb?
Simon Squibb, yep.
Yes, and he wrote his book about how he has developed this sense of following a dream, which sounds twee when you say it like this, but it's a really well thought out book about the way he came from really not just nothing, but being pushed way back beyond the starting line.
Yeah, genuine precarity. Literally not knowing where he'd sleep and if he'd have food tomorrow.
Absolutely. And so he argues that what you really need is the dream, that North Star, and you can make stuff happen. You don't need to go all around making business plans, etc. What was interesting there is, because he was focused on, you've got to be like this because you need to succeed, and if you don't, you go hungry. And it struck me as I was reading that when we had Robert Ringer's book that we were reading, he was arguing that if you watch the well-to-do people, the reason they get the best deals is they're not hungry. And so they don't care. They can be aloof and not rushed. And so we have some tension here, David. There's a few more things, but let's start with this one. Is this an either-or? Is there a both and? Is there something in between?
I think it's both based on who are you and what's your life experience. So let's draw the distinction between these two authors. Simon Squibb at 15, his dad died. A month later, his mum and him had a fight. She threw him out of the house. He never went back. He was homeless and not at school and not earning at 15. Robert Ringer, on the other hand, was doing chemical engineering at college, passing, but didn't want to be a chemical engineer. Worst come to worst, he could have gone out tomorrow and got a well-paid technical job if getting involved in the real estate world had failed. He didn't want to, but he could have. So I think the key thing here is part of the reason we read all these books and recommend different books to different people is what you've experienced so far will determine what might help you next, what might fill a gap, what might enhance your perspective, what might help give you a new insight. So books really are contingent on your experience and relative need. And there is no perfect author or perfect argument, or we'd all be doing the same thing.
Perhaps it's like, I remember interviewing Rabbi Brash many years ago, who was a well-known Jewish scholar, and he had a book called Where Did It Begin? A fantastic book. It gives the origins to all the different sayings we have. And I said to him, how do you reconcile all the different religions? And he said, it's very easy, Steve. He said, there are many pathways to the top of the same mountain. And so I think that applies here. Ultimately, they're heading in the same direction, but it's you wear what fits. The other aspect of this was Squibb is pretty gung-ho with trying your best to bootstrap your enterprise. Start with the least number of costs, do everything for free, on the cheap, just start it going, use your wits, be wily. And then Blair Innes, whose book we read, Four Conversations, he has a podcast with David C. Baker. They're both in this business realm, and they had a different take on it. They said, you shouldn't have to eat your broccoli. If there are aspects of your business you don't like doing, pay someone else, bring in help to have it done. So again, David, is there a way of reconciling these two mindsets?
Well, there I would jump to someone like Richard Koch and his book on the 80-20 principle. If you get 80% of your income from 20% of your effort, what are you better investing more time and effort in? Doing more of that or doing the other 80% of stuff that generates 20% of your income? And Koch doesn't say you can completely get rid of stuff that's not moving the needle. But he said, where possible, if you can outsource something that's not moving the outcome needle to someone else for whom they do it well, they can take pride in doing it, they can maybe even get enjoyment, which frees you to double down on what you're good at. So, the whole thing of not eating your broccoli, in my opinion, is a bad description of 80-20. It's not a question that broccoli is good for you, bad for you, you want to eat it, you don't want to eat it. It is a question of, if I spend time eating my broccoli, am I wasting time on something else that would be even better for me? Like, should I actually be eating my microgreens?
I'm glad we had this conversation, because as I'm thinking, we planned to have a chat about it, but as happens with the nature of conversation, different things pop up. I just finally released our website in a week offer. And as part of that, and there's a blog post that goes into the background, which we'll talk more about next week because there's some interesting psychology, but long and short of it is, On one hand, it goes against everything I've stood for 20 years. I've wanted our dear clients to do as much as possible themselves so they can keep costs down and, learn how to express themselves with a bit of guidance, of course, but, just chug along. However, that doesn't work for everyone. And for when it doesn't work, their projects tend to drag on, and sometimes never see the light of day, whereas Website in a Week is where we take the reins and we go through at speed, but with experienced speed. We just know how to get things done. This is a great example, David, of
yes,
exactly these two worlds.
Of 80-20 it going, what is a person in small business good at? Running their business. What are we good at? Making sure their website works the way it should and is presented the way that will have the best impact. So the best thing we can do for them is give them their time back as fast as possible by them trusting us to get what they need right. Everyone's in their 80-20 space.
And with their time back, they can read another book.
Yep.
Our 4 Ps. Number 3, problems. I asked the question for the best reason possible. Simple curiosity. Oscar Wilde.
David, what do you do when someone or a company you love does something you really don't like?
Well, normally you and I complain to each other that they're doing dumb stuff and it's going to burn their reputation. And then we make the point that we wouldn't do it to people. And then we feel slightly better that at least we don't do stuff that dumb.
I think we're about to rinse and repeat on that. Because, look, as many of you will know, most of our websites are with Ventra IP here in Australia. And, they do a good job for a fair price. They have some decent support, and it's been a joy to support this Australian company. But they've taken a play from the cynical playbook that LinkedIn uses. We've already stuck our teeth into LinkedIn, not fans of the way that company works and treats us, its users. And this is the play they've done. I got an email last week, as I'm sure many of our listeners would have too if they're with Ventra IP, saying, as a token of our appreciation for your continued support, we're pleased to offer you a free domain name. Now, isn't that lovely? There's a catch, though. So they're saying this complimentary domain name's our way of saying thank you. Whether you're a business owner, a blogger, or enthusiast, it can help elevate your online presence. I just noticed that they had this written by AI. Protect your brand and make your mark on the web. No commitment, no payment required. And the free domain name they gave us was talkingaboutmarketing.online. Here's the thing. I don't want it. And you know why? It's unnecessary, and the domain name renews every year. So what's a free gift this year becomes extra money for them next year. It's the same as LinkedIn saying, we thank you for loving us. So here's a special month of, or a week or whatever, of LinkedIn Premium, without making too much of the point that after that, bang, you're in. So never accept those offers. Here's what makes this even worse, and this is really disappointing. If you don't want it, they tell you how you can get out of it. And basically, you have to log into your service. You've got to look at all the services that you have with them, find the domain name in question, and click Manage, and then Delete. Hi, it's Steve here, just cutting in from the editing booth. I did go through and just delete the domain name. To Ventra IP's credit, at least auto-renew was disabled. However, it still doesn't get them off the hook from what we're discussing about, because there will be all the announcements to say that it's up for renewal. And at the cynical end of the spectrum, maybe anticipating, relying on the fact that people will think, oh, gee, maybe I do need to pay this. On the generous side, at least, they are reminding me of the way they began, which seemed to be a very noble company. The reason why I'm erring towards the cynical side is that not a week goes by that I don't have emails from small business people forwarding domain renewal notices from different companies and asking me if they're valid or not, because sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. It is a place of confusion in the business world, and when it's not your full-time job, it can be baffling. And that's why I really hope they being Venture IP, find a different way to actually genuinely support and promote their long-time loyal customers, and not just take this little grab of another domain name, which then needs, are you going to do anything with it? It's such an impoverished offer. Very disappointing. Venture IP, look, we love you. This is not necessarily making us leave, but I tell you what, seriously, if I am now have my eyes open for genuine competitors who will stick to their knitting and look after us and not do these cheap tricks.
Our 4 Ps. Number 4. Perspicacity. The one duty we owe to history is to rewrite it. Oscar Wilde.
Finally, in perspicacity this week, we're moving from some company that's trying to fling you something free that then costs you money to another company that's just decided, we don't care about you, you're small fry, we're removing the service altogether. And I talk about our beloved Microsoft, who has decided to delete Skype. So Skype will be no more. And I don't hear the world necessarily crying and moaning. Do you hear any wailing or gnashing of teeth?
Only in conversations like you and I had about it was the easiest way to record a podcast where you were recording computer to phone.
Absolutely.
Theirs was the simple option. Now, there's other options out there, but they're much more expensive than just a little bit of Skype credit. But I'm guessing that's the last thing that's kept Skype alive for professionals.
It's certainly the reason I have it. We use Zoom for all our conversations with each other, but as a podcaster, keeping my little $10 balance there, knowing that if I'm on the road or we have to interview someone who's on the phone, you just start using Skype and it will instantly, once it draws down from that 10, it will automatically rebill itself. Just beautiful and easy. When I had a very quick look around for equivalent services, instead of having that sort of fair model, which I think a company like Microsoft could easily afford to maintain, they all are fixed monthly fees that you're paying. And the trouble is you might use Skype 3 times a year. It's just not economically wise to be doing that. It's just yet another drain on resources. Mind you, as you pointed out to me, I had missed this update, but I have since practiced, and now with my iPhone, if I need to record a call, I just record it in the phone. So Skype has gone. So from a perspicacity perspective, we look at services or anything from the past, like Skype was. It was once the bee's knees, and it pushed the boundaries of what you could do with the tech. Maybe this is just a sign of the times. It's like the horse and carriage builder finally acknowledging that there are cars out there. Is that probably the analogy?
I think that's part of it. The other thing, I think, is when Skype started, it was that whole thing of whatever it was, late 90s, early 2000s. What's possible? What can we do? What can we make happen? But then was gobbled by the mega company and, turned into a pretty bland piece of sandwich meat in the bland Microsoft sandwich. And yet it still had its use. And now, well, they don't want to support it. It doesn't make enough money. It's gone. So I suppose the thing I hope is that there's still room out there for a half dozen little nerds to build the next thing we need that isn't run by a megalithic company.
There you go. There's a challenge for half a dozen little nerds.
Hello, welcome to Skype call testing service. After the beep, please record a message. Afterwards, your message will be played back to you.
Hi, Microsoft. Why are you closing down Skype? Have we done something wrong? Are you jealous of us using Zoom? But nothing really replaces you easily. Hello? Hello, Microsoft, are you there? Are you there? Hi, Microsoft. Why are you closing down Skype? Have we done something wrong? Are you jealous of us using Zoom? But nothing really replaces you easily. Hello? Hello, Microsoft, are you there?
If you are able to hear your own voice, then you have configured Skype correctly. If you hear this message, but not your own voice, then something is wrong with your audio recording settings. Please check your microphone and microphone settings or visit skype.com for more help. Thank you for using the Skype call testing service. Goodbye.
Goodbye, indeed. One of our dear listeners, Bill Baker, she just spotted, first of all, the Skype notice, which sadly I'd already come across because my initial reaction was, yet another change to systems. But she also noticed that Microsoft has told people, we're getting rid of Publisher as well, by the way. So if you want to keep your Publisher designs, you need to convert their files. But as she said, she's only rarely seen a design in Publisher worth saving. And I think there's probably something in that, because when I think Publisher, I think of those gaudy, cutesy, sickly, sweet little kindergarten newsletters, church pew notices, all that sort of stuff where given someone a library of little line-drawing cartoons, they went crazy and added extra things that didn't need to be there, changed a font every single paragraph. They might be doing the world a favour, David.
Look, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to get an hour of their day back with the death of Publisher.
What, from not making it or from not having to read the stuff?
Both.
Well, as Belle said, keep smiling.
As long as it's not in a line drawing.
Thank you for listening to Talking About Marketing. If you enjoyed it, please leave a rating or a review in your favourite podcast app. And if you found it helpful, please share it with others. Steve and David always welcome your comments and questions, so send them to podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. And finally, the last word to Oscar Wilde. There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about.